Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode of the Survival Project. Today's guest is Jack Brennan from Dublin, who at just 23 years of age underwent a double hip replacement after years of chronic pain caused by Perthes disease. In this episode, Jack dives into what it was like growing up with a rare degenerative hip condition, being told he was too young for the surgery that he actually desperately needed, and the mental and the physical impact of trying to hold his entire life together while living in constant pain. Let's get into it. Jack, welcome to the Survival Project, man. It is my pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to chatting today. Thanks for having me on.
So I suppose kick things off. Would you mind sharing your journey with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to constantly trim it down because it is a bit of a long story. But to cut a long story short, I had a disease in my hips as a child that caused my hips to not grow properly, and it caused a lot of chronic pain. And that eventually led to me getting a double hip replacement last year at age 23. So the disease I had as a child was called Perthes. It affects roughly one in around 25,000 to 50,000 children, although some people think it's even more uncommon than that. It basically stops blood from flowing to the femoral head of the hip, which, as you can imagine, when your hips don't grow, the bone actually dies. It causes a lot of problems, especially when you're that age. It means your hips don't really develop properly. Instead of being shaped, like a football, like round, they kind of flatten at the top. So that causes a lot of discomfort in the joint. Obviously, this is what I understand now, but at the time I didn't really understand what was going on. That's what kind of made it really difficult. Age 5 to 10 was probably when it affected me the most. I had a lot of pain that I didn't really understand, and I had quite a heavy limp. I'd still try and play, Gaelic football. I try and do the usual things that kids do, but it was holding me back. But luckily, once I kind of got into my teenage years, the symptoms kind of eased. I'm not really sure on reflection why that was or how it happened, but I had a good run kind of from age 10 to 18 where I was living a relatively normal life. I was playing GAA at like a decent level. I was enjoying life. Didn't bother me in school, didn't have the pain. I'd notice it maybe if, I don't know, the school were doing like a hike or something. I'd notice, geez, I kind of can't really climb like that I'd feel it in my hips. Or maybe after a match, I'd probably have to hop in a hot bath or throw the ice packs on my hips. It kind of became very normal. That was until shit hit the fan, and I started getting pain in my hip around age 18, and the rest is history. That's what's led me to today, where I'm sitting here with two metal hips.
Wow, like for symptoms to start at the age of 5, like that is early doors. My God.
Yeah.
And they're saying about like you're putting ice on your hips. Your normal is someone's hardest day, and you're only a child, teenager experiencing this. Like that is just a lot to be going through. I imagine dealing with chronic pain, being that young, as your normal everyday existence must be very tough, trying to figure out, why is this happening to me? Why am I as maybe strong as the other lads and different things like that? How do you feel that your experience from such a young age kind of shaped you as you moved into your teenage years?
I think it definitely had a massive impact. And it's funny because I'm only really kind of truly understanding the impact it had in recent years, because I was just far too young. I think if it had affected me at age 10 even, maybe I'd have a better chance of understanding it. But the symptoms started when I was 4, and it took a full year to get diagnosed with Perthes. No one really knew what it was. I had to go to multiple different specialists. Someone thought it might have been cancer. Someone thought it was a hernia. So not only did I not understand what was going on, but no one did. My parents didn't. So when I was suffering with that pain and I was asking, my mom, like, why me? Why am I in so much pain? She didn't even know what to tell me, which, I actually feel really bad for my parents, because even if they did know, what do you say? So I did find struggling with that pain really hard. Those are your formative years. Even something simple like trying to run in the yard in school, but you're actually, not only are you not running, you're limping. I found that hard. I definitely think it affected my confidence. And I remember feeling anxious at a young age, just purely because I felt different to everyone else. I kind of wonder, it doesn't really look like anyone else is going through this. It's just me. And that was very confusing.
Yeah, the confusion as a child to see everyone else doing things that is their normal and you're not able to do them. You're thinking, why me, as you said? And I just want to touch on probably the impact it has on a family as well. Like for your parents at such a young age, for you to be asking those questions, trying to understand, and them not able to give you answers, it's heartbreaking for parents, I imagine. As tough it is for the child who's experiencing it, it has such a ripple effect through families when chronic illness and these problems come into play.
Yeah.
And as you said, not being able to get any answers, like living in uncertainty, must have given you such anxiety every day, kind of wondering what's this day going to bring? How am I going to get any answers? You mentioned before that you had a better period through your teenage years. There's no reasoning behind that? No answers? Is it just kind of the way things planned out?
Great question. I think it's due to the nature of Perthes disease, the way it affects your hip. It kind of happens over a course of 3 or 4 years where the bone stops getting blood flow, it dies, and then it tries to kind of rebuild itself and grow back. And that occurs over roughly 2 to 4 year period. So I think the reason why I was better from age 10 onwards was because it kind of hit me in my right hip initially around age 4 or 5. And then you can imagine how heartbreaking it was when age 7 or 8, I was diagnosed with it in my left hip too. So Perthes is, call it 1 in 50,000. I think it's around 1 in 10 who have Perthes get it in a second hip. So I really was quite unfortunate, pulled a short straw. So I guess the overlap of that, as soon as my right hip got better, my left hip started getting affected. And I think it was around age, 10 or 11 where both hips had kind of settled. They were the way they were. They weren't perfect. They were flat. There wasn't much space in the joint. But thankfully, it wasn't causing me that pain that I had before. So that kind of led me to think, I know you mentioned before, I kind of thought I'd gotten away with it. I kind of thought that was it. And in those 7 or 8 years from age 10 to 18, didn't have a single checkup, didn't have a doctor's appointment. As far as I was concerned, that was it. I remember my parents saying, oh, you might need a hip replacement when you're younger, maybe at age 50 or 60 instead of 70. And I thought, grand. Oh, wasn't expecting to be here with two two new hips at age 25 now. It's a bit mad.
Oh my God. Like I see a little bit of a mirror in my own journey. When I had my first ostomy surgery, I was 19. I thought, same as that, I'd gotten away with it. I was so healthy. I was so happy. My life had completely changed. And then for symptoms to come back, it's like your whole world falls apart. You think, how could I possibly have to go through this again? And I know from your journey, there is a solution, the hip replacement. And obviously they were saying to you were too young for it. What was it like to know that there is an option, there is something that'll fix the issue, but not being granted access to it?
I would honestly say it's hard to describe how difficult I found that. It was just such mixed emotions. I'd say like frustration and a lot of upset, because I think knowing that there, wasn't a cure, for example, like a lot of people are in that position, and I'm very fortunate that there was a cure. But if there wasn't, then maybe I'd have a little bit of closure, I would say. But the fact that hip replacement was an option that felt like it was behind, a glass door, it was just very difficult to wrestle with that. For context, Perthes disease, there's no known cause and there's no known cure. But the fact that a cure presents itself in the form of a hip replacement, like a brand new joint entirely, it was just very difficult to basically be told no because of my age. Like for a bit of context, when I went to the same consultant I had when I was a child at age 18, got my hips x-rayed, he said, yeah, like, your hip is shaped like a rugby ball, not a football. There's very little space left in the joint. It's not arthritic now, but it probably will be because you've no cartilage left. And I kind of went, okay, what now? And he said, well, they need to be replaced, but I won't do it for you. You're he said, maybe come back to me when you hit your 40s. You're going to have to manage this pain until then. Kind of have a nice day. And from then onwards, it was trying different consultants. I had one for a while. I tried steroidal injections in the hips, which first time doing it, it helped the pain, helped bring it down from maybe like a 7 or 8 to like a 4. And in the context of that helped me a lot at the time. But it kind of hit a point where going to physio every week, taking painkillers every 4 hours every day for years on end, the injections, it all stopped working. And it kind of hit a point where I realized, I've been told no, but I kind of can't afford to take that for an answer. I was kind of worried about where my life was headed. I was starting to get worried about myself because there's only so much someone can take. So it kind of became, not many people can say that they had to fight to get a surgery, although a lot of people do. You shouldn't have to fight to get, the right help, but I did.
As you said, you were worried for yourself, like obviously being told no, and as you said, like behind a glass door, that the option was there and you're not being granted access to it. You learned very young, obviously, that you had to advocate for yourself and fight for yourself. What was that like the first time you felt you really had to stand up for yourself here?
It was difficult because I questioned myself many times, wondering, is this the right thing? Is this what I should be doing? For a bit of background, I actually think trying to put off hip replacement for as long as you can is definitely the right thing. they're the professionals. There's never been a point where I'm questioning the professionals. It's a case of the human side not being brought into it. And I think that's until I found the consultant I ended up going with who did my surgery, no one that I'd been to had considered the human side. They're looking at an x-ray and they're making their decisions based on the x-ray and my age. But no amount of explaining how much pain I was in, how poor my quality of life was, and how much I was struggling, especially mentally. None of that ever meant anything to anyone I'd seen. So for me, I realized, well, I just need to find someone who's willing to consider the human side, not only the physical side. An x-ray doesn't tell you as much as you think. That's what my surgeon who did my surgery said. Someone could have a really, really bad x-ray and they could be living life no problem. Whereas my x-ray maybe didn't look as bad as someone else's, but the way that it was affecting me, the pain it was causing me was such a big factor. And that's why he ultimately ended up making his decision. He said, I'll do the double hip replacement. I don't want you to live your life the way you're living it. He actually said he was worried about me. He said, I don't think you have another 5 years in you to keep dealing with it. So while trying to put off hip replacement is technically the right thing, at what point do you draw a line in the sand and say, right, enough is enough? And I think I had had enough. So that's why I decided, and I'm glad I did. I said, I have to get it. I can't keep coping with this pain and the way my life was going.
Yeah, like you're not the name on the chart, you're the human being sitting in front of them. And going from a textbook, as you said, prolonging it as long as possible to avoid surgery, to maybe cut down the amount of surgeries that may be needed is obviously the textbook way of doing it. But you have to look at the human being in front of you, and there's no blanket statements when it comes to dealing with chronic illness. So yeah, my God, man, you really, really went through it. With everything that you went through at the time, obviously it must have been such a dark place to be in. When you went through that, what were you doing to kind of support your mental health? Was it just kind of focusing on the future and hoping for a brighter tomorrow, or what techniques did you kind of build up yourself?
That's a really good question, because I think the way it impacted me mentally is such a big part of the past 5 or 6 years for me. I had to focus on doing everything I could to, what I would say, counterbalance the negative effects of the pain. I relied heavily on the gym. It's not something that I've actually really spoken about much on my social media. Part of it is that I don't want to, come across as like another gym influencer, because that's not what I am and that's not what I want to be. But for me, the fact that my condition was degenerative, the fact that I knew for a fact it was going downhill all the time, I felt a strong need to improve other things to almost balance it out. So I did a lot of research. I kind of learned how to train my upper body in the gym. And I thought, well, if I can build muscle, if I can get lean, if I can get in better shape without letting the pain stop me, well, then at least I can say I'm trying my best and I'm fighting my hardest. I just fought in as many ways as I could. I'd go for a walk on a day where I was in a lot of pain, purely so that I could sit back down afterwards and say, well, I did it. I kind of beat it. I just didn't want to let my pain and my condition get the better of me. I actually just saw it as a fight. That's how it was in my mind. Like, am I going to win today, or is it going to win today? And it won many times. I wasn't able to get to the gym if the pain was too bad. I wasn't able to do other things for my mental health. I found it hard, because what can you do when the pain is limiting you? Like, I would have loved to have done a lot of things over the years. That's what I'm realizing now. Like, wait, I can do this. I can, there's endless examples, but I relied heavily on the gym. I relied heavily on understanding how I was feeling. I tried to learn as much as I could about how chronic pain impacts your mental health. So I thought, at least if I can understand it, then maybe that would help me kind of deal with it.
Yeah, I think it's absolute paramount to self-education and self-awareness to understand that what you're going through and try and tackle it in the best way that you possibly can. And that's exactly what you did. Like saying that you're battling every day, and being so honest as to say you didn't win every day. That's really, really good to hear, because I know we can always, especially with social media and stuff, we share the wins. We don't see too many people sharing the losses. So to be so honest and be like, this thing bet me some days, but look where I am now, and look at you, you're absolutely flying it. Just with the all the drugs you take, painkillers and stuff, was there any kind of ripple effect, anything else crop up from the amount of medication you had to take?
Yeah, it absolutely destroyed my stomach. Now, it's one of these where it's so tricky to figure out what's going on. I'm sure, like, all about that. I guess what happened was I had to take anti-inflammatories more or less around the clock. They were called Vimovo. They had a kind of stomach protector in them, but taking that amount of anti-inflammatories all the time, I started noticing my stomach was getting so bloated. And what ended up happening was that my body just started rejecting foods that I've been eating all my life. Like many other Irish lads, I'd have a pint of milk with my dinner, and then I'd notice that my stomach would be out to here. I'd be pregnant after that pint of milk, or, my wrap in work or on my lunch was starting to really actually cause a lot of stomach pain. So I went to get a blood test done, like a blood panel, and more or less all the foods I was eating were being rejected by my body. So I stopped eating gluten, dairy, beef, a lot of other things. And I actually still don't eat those things. I still eat a really restrictive diet because I'm so scared that my immune system and my body would, reject them. So as you say, like the knock-on effects, that's just one effect of taking painkillers around the clock. But I think the fact that so many young people are told, well, just take these pills and it'll ease the pain, without considering the other side effects. I actually started getting mouth ulcers, which then ended up meaning I kept getting throat infections. And it's so random, but Jesus, I was having a hard enough time of it as things were without all of that on top of it. I would say I'm very anti painkillers. I actually just felt they made me feel crap. That's the only way I could put it. It got to the point where I actually stopped taking them entirely because I'd rather be in slightly more pain, but feeling better in myself if I had more energy and felt better in my body, I could help manage the pain myself a little bit better than being in less pain, but feeling like absolute crap.
Like the frustration of treating one symptom, which then has a trigger effect and gives you 5 other symptoms. It's the other side of chronic illness that isn't usually seen, because on paper, this is what we're experiencing, but really, truly behind closed doors, you're going through hell. And as you said, foods that you're eating every single day, not being able to eat them anymore is just, it gives you food anxiety, complete health anxiety with everything you're experiencing.
Yeah.
You said there was a point where you knew that you couldn't keep going like this. What was that moment like for you?
It hit me naturally because I was at a place in my life where I was looking ahead and just thinking, I've only just about made it this far. How the hell am I meant to make it any further? I actually remember it vividly. I was on holiday with my girlfriend. I was working my full-time job about a year at that point, and it had gotten to the point where, unlike all the graduates who are in 2 or 3 days a week in the office having a crack, I was working from home almost full time at that point because the pain had got too bad. And I was facing exams. I'm trained to be a chartered accountant. Just about got through college. Don't know how I even managed, to be honest, on reflection. And I was looking ahead and I was thinking, well, I'm trying to build a career here. I'm trying to build a life. After everything I'd been through, I thought, can I do all of that again? I just straight away, I thought, no, I can't. So instead of sitting in the sun, enjoying my holiday, I was thinking about all of this. I was taking the time to really think about my options. And I kind of thought to myself, I just need to find a way. Not only did I think I couldn't get through it if I had to, but I just didn't want to put myself through it. I didn't want to lose a version of myself going through too much hardship again. I kind of realized it's a miracle that I'm still able to be happy, able to be okay. But I knew if I had to do another 5, 10, 15 years with this pain, it would just take away, who I am. So it made it very clear for me that I just had to find a way. I had to get as many appointments for as many consultants as I had to. I had to do as much research as I could, ask around who'll do a hip replacement young. And that's kind of why, because it was such a big deal for me, that's kind of why I felt the need to share my journey when I actually got the hip replacement, because it kind of hit me. I was sitting in hospital going, well, I'm the only young person in this hospital, but can you imagine around the world how many other young people are going through the exact same thing as what I am? And I wanted them to know that there was a way, even when for many of us really didn't feel like there was.
And as a young person, to be sitting in a hospital bed, you're on Instagram, you're looking at the lives that everyone is having. They're on holidays, they're traveling, they're doing all the things that you're like, this should be my basis. I should be doing all these things, and a frustration builds from it. But to use your experience and then create a platform to share your experience to help other people is a fantastic thing to take from everything that you went through, because you can't really let any suffering go to waste. You have to turn it into a positive, and that's absolutely what you've done. So hats off to you, man, because I love watching your videos here. You're such a natural at talking about it, and I know you mentioned that people have reached out to you. Have you dealt with many people in Ireland, or is it mainly international that people you've spoken to are experiencing similar similar?
A bit of both, which has been great because I think when you crunch the numbers of, let's say, Perthes disease, off the top of my head, you're thinking, right, well, if it's 1 in 50,000 and there's 5 million people in Ireland, you're talking, oh, so there's 50 people in the country. And then you think, well, I thought initially, can I at least reach like one person? I kind of thought sitting in hospital, like you said, I was scrolling Instagram, I was seeing people at concerts, at festivals, on holidays, traveling. And I thought, well, first I thought, well, I might actually be able to do this someday. But I thought, can I just see one person who's going through what I am so that I don't feel like a complete outcast? And I just, in the moment, because I never imagined I'd be sharing on social media like this, but I thought, well, let me just make one video anyway. You know, I'd plenty of time on my hands sitting at home, not, not moving, not walking. So I made one video, and within a day, I got a message from a girl in Ireland, I think from Belfast, who also had Perthes and had gotten a hip replacement 6 months beforehand. And that was just amazing. I feel like for me and for her, because it's like I'm meeting another person who had this super rare disease, and I'm also meeting someone who had a hip replacement as well. And then I was able to ask her, am I going to be okay? Is everything going to end up being okay? Because it doesn't really feel like it right now. And that kind of just snowballed from there, because the more I started talking about what I was going through, I realized, as you said before, there's so much relatability across many different conditions and illnesses. I'd kind of talk about the pain, and then I'd come across someone who maybe didn't have a hip problem, but maybe had a disease in their knee, or had some kind of autoimmune disease that caused pain. There's so many different kind of rare diseases, but they all have the same impact. So it kind of just meant that the more I made videos, the more messages I'd get. I'd say I've got about 100 people who have Perthes messaged me, which is just still hard to believe, because before I got the operation, before I made my first video, I'd never met anyone who had it. I'd never heard of anyone who had it. So to be able to reach people from the US, Australia, South America even, like it's been nice, because instead of feeling like the odd one out, I know for a fact that there's other people out there. So I've kind of tried to do that in terms of like what I post, what I make videos and posts about. I'm hoping that maybe there's another version of me out there who thinks they're the only one, and then they happen to stumble across a video I've made and they think, oh well, I'm not the only one.
It's a fantastic thing to do, man. I know when you experience so much hardship in life, and you break through, all you can think about is helping someone else who may have been where you were before. And it's just being able to do that. I know myself, when I started sharing my journey, people message me looking for advice, and I get so much out of being able to help people. And in the same sense, you build your network, and when you have a question, you can pop it up. So it's a real over and back of helping each other. And I know one of these kind of Instagram words is "I feel seen." I kind of hate it myself, but
Yeah.
there's such truth in it. There's absolutely such truth in it. And by using your platform to do that, man, it's absolutely fantastic. I just want to actually dive into the surgery a little bit, because that must have been, I actually can't even imagine what you went through.
Yeah, it was hard. I woke up after the surgery and I kind of thought, fucking hell, I was the one who asked for this. Like, like I was going, Jesus, like, God. But I didn't doubt it for a second. I got both hips replaced at the same time. It's a bilateral hip replacement. I kind of started calling it a double hip replacement, because I'd be telling my friends and family before the operation I'm getting a bilateral hip replacement, and no one really knew straight off the bat what that means. Whereas when you say double, straight away you're going, both hips, like you got both done like at the same time. How are you meant to walk? And I'm kind of going, I don't know. Like, it was extremely hard. And to be honest, I've talked about this before. I amn't afraid to say that it was hard, because I think if I, for whatever reason, made it seem easy, I'd be giving the wrong impression. So as much as I try to show like how good life can be after such a major surgery, I'm sharing my recovery at the moment. I'm learning to run again. I will, as often as I can, I'll go back to the fact that it was by far the hardest thing I've ever been through. It was 5 nights in hospital. The pain after the operation was really hard to deal with. And I'm sure you know yourself, like you get used to pain, you build a high tolerance, but the pain from the bruising and from the wound on both sides, hardly slept for the first couple of weeks. I was on really strong painkillers like Oxycontin, Oxynorm, couldn't eat anything. It was an absolutely miserable couple of weeks, but I knew what it was for. It actually felt like I'd started over. So at least I knew on day one, I thought, well, I'll never be this bad again. At least tomorrow is one day closer to the end goal. It's like the light at the end of the tunnel. So that's what kept me kind of going through it. But I can't downplay how hard it was, and especially how hard it is mentally heading into a surgery like that. I was quite anxious heading into it. What helped me personally was just thinking about what I was doing it for. I tried to reframe it in my mind as something of like, instead of this happening to me, this is something I want. I had to keep reminding myself, I'm the one who asked for this. I could have stayed in the pain I was at and trying to deal with that, but I knew it was going to really do a number on me and my happiness and my mental health. So I went for it. The initial recovery was really hard. I didn't have a good leg, which I didn't even really think about before the operation. Like you do your ACL or you get one hip replacement, you're on crutches, you can't put pressure on that leg. But the fact that I couldn't put pressure on either leg definitely made it harder than it probably needed to be.
I have to commend you on being so honest about what you went through, because maybe it's an Irish thing, I don't know, but you can kind of be like, it was hard or whatever. But being completely honest about what you went through, because if you're not, you're also doing a disservice to what you went through, and you're doing a disservice to someone else who might go through, because they might be thinking, oh my God, he had it so much easier than me. What's so wrong with me? Why can't I cope? And so being
Yeah.
completely honest with the people around us, and with your platform is an amazing thing to do. I just want to dive into the rebuild a little bit, because obviously you were on such drugs. Oxynorm for me, I got addicted to Oxynorm. I used to be looking forward to it. I'd be like, God, is it another half an hour? I need it quicker, to the point where I was getting anxious waiting on it, because the pain was so much. But
Yeah.
when
I
you
don't blame you, by the way. It's a slippery slope.
100%, and what was your experience with afterwards? Because I know it's a lot of toxins in a sense we're putting into our body. We have to cleanse ourselves, detox and everything like that, both mentally and physically. How was the couple of weeks afterwards? Like, how long did it take you to kind of take your first steps?
Great question, because those weeks felt like months and years. The time went really slowly, and it was as hard mentally as it was physically, because, I felt very numb. That's the way I'd put it. And I didn't like feeling like that, because right behind me, there's a couch in the sitting room behind me, and we had to take out the couch and get a rented hospital bed, because I realized my bed upstairs is quite low. And even though you can walk up and downstairs after hip replacement, I kind of even thought, well, if I can avoid that, I will. So we got a hospital bed rented, and I sat in that bed for a month as I tried my best to learn to walk again, get back on my feet. But a month kept up in this small room was, I would actually say, harder mentally than it was physically, because the time went so slowly. Ran out of things to watch on Netflix. And I think if I didn't feel so bad, like, you just feel so bad after the surgery, you're not sleeping, you can't eat, the pain is really bad. I found it hard. It was actually, it's hard to put into words. Yeah.
And I completely get it. Like that, being stuck in that room, looking at the sunshine or the rain or whatever day it is, like you're looking out the window and you're thinking, when am I going to fucking get back? And the boredom, you're thinking, at least if I could sleep, it would pass the time. Like, yeah.
Exactly. A bit of a turning point around the 2 week mark, because those first 2 weeks went really, really badly. The first week in hospital, the second week, at home. I went out in the back garden. We've like a small pavement, and I started just doing laps, circles on my crutches, trying to figure out, well, how can I plant my feet? And it kind of hit me then that this is like my final push, because I know I'm working towards being pain free and getting back on my feet. I started feeling motivated again, because in that first week or two, you really don't feel motivated to rebuild, to recover, because you're just feeling too bad, you're feeling too unwell and in too much pain. But it kind of hit a point where I thought, well, let me just take one small step every day, and it would be, 1 minute in the garden, 2 minutes in the garden. Eventually started going down to the local park down the road and trying to slowly build up how many steps I could do each day. And I'd have to have my girlfriend, my mum, my dad with me, because for those first week or two that I was leaving the house, I'd say around the 2 to 3 week mark after the surgery, like, I couldn't be left alone. I kind of had to have someone around me, because what if I fell? I not having that good leg meant that when I was moving on crutches, I was using the two crutches. I wasn't actually planting my feet. So it was really hard. And because I'd spent so many years fighting the pain and fighting Perthes disease, I just saw this as like the title fight, the grand finale, like the last thing that I'll have to fight for. So I got myself up for it. I set small goals in my mind, and I realized that if I set the bar too high for myself, I'd only end up disappointing myself. So even on the days where I wasn't making progress, I just kind of thought, well, can I do a little bit more? So that kind of built up over time. Maybe 3 weeks post-op, I was doing a minute on the crutches. Then 4 weeks post-op, I was getting halfway around the park. 5 weeks post-op, I'm doing a full lap of the park, no problem, slowly improving every day. It took me 2 hours to do that full lap because I'd walk for 2 minutes, I'd sit for five, do more and more and more. And eventually time starts flying. I go back to my consultant after 6 weeks and he says you can start easing off the two crutches onto one crutch. Then by week 8 or 9, I'm off the crutches entirely. And, I'm like a baby bird or something flying for the first time. I'm down in the park trying to walk without the crutches. And I'm actually so glad I documented the whole thing because I look back at them videos and I'm like, wow, this time last year I was at the 6 week mark, just getting off those two crutches onto one. Like, look how far I've made it now. So I think those little bits of progress, even though they were small at the time, kept me going. And it just made me hungry and want more and more and more. So that kind of snowballed from one crutch to no crutches. And then, can I start walking? And then I'm able to walk, but I've got a limp. So then, can I get rid of the limp? Then I've got no limp. I think maybe I can start training my legs in the gym. And as I start training my legs in the gym, I'm like, well, maybe my legs are ready to do more. And that's where it's kind of led to this point where I want to learn to run again and see if I can do it, because I don't think I'm ready to stop. I think like I'm still carrying that momentum from being on crutches after the surgery, not being able to walk. I want to keep pushing and pushing. So some people might think I'm a bit mad or something. Like, would I not give myself a break? Like, would I not just maybe hit pause now and enjoy life? But I think after making it so far, I just keep I want to keep doing more and more.
And I love that because you're like, look how far I've come, but I'm not where I'm going to be. You're like,
Yeah,
watch me, look who I'm going to
absolutely.
become. It's a fantastic mentality to have, because even you saying there, like setting little goals every day, but also having evidence, like recording what you do, whether you don't post it online or anything, to be able to look back and say, this is where I fucking came from. Look at where I am. Because I suppose in the present moment, we can get a little bit bogged down when we're not making the progress that we feel we should be making every day. But when we look back, we go, oh shit, a
Yeah.
year ago, if I'd known I'd been here, I would have been delighted. But
Yeah.
like when I hear you speak, I think, what a man, like what an animal to go through everything you went through, literally learn how to walk again. And now you're like, I'm going for a run. The strength of mind to be able to do that. One thing that I know, just to dive into a little bit, is this is who your illness has made you become from your own experience. But now
Yeah.
that you're heading towards health and you know, there's a light at the end of the horizon, do you feel you're going to head back to rediscovering who you were before illness, or do you feel you're kind of embracing someone new?
I love that question because I feel like the way that illness affects you and who you are isn't really something that's spoken about often. What I would say is, because it affected me from such a young age, I can't remember who I was up until age 4. I think maybe my parents do, but I don't. So I've embraced it as, who I am. I think if I tried to reject it, it would mean I don't think I'd ever be able to fully be myself and be happy with who I am. So I definitely embrace it. I try and embrace it in every walk of life, because with how it's impacted me, I think I just see things differently to how most people would. I try and channel it into as much of a positive thing as I can. If I wake up maybe tired, like, I'm pretty tired this week. Like, for example, I've had a busy week in work. I've been on a few nights out, which for most people, they'd be waking up maybe hungover and tired and going, oh, not really bothered to hit the gym today. Whereas I'm going, this day last year, I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet, like cop on. So I try and just keep it in mind with everything that I'm doing. The most basic things are things that I feel lucky to be able to do. Even sitting here with you, not having that burning pain in my hips, I'm so thankful. I find myself enjoying sitting at the desk doing my work on Excel. Such boring work, but to be able to do my boring day job without being in pain is really special. So I just try and embrace what I've been through as much as I can, because I'm really happy with the person it's made me. If I'm to take the positives from it, I sometimes I don't really know how I managed to stay positive this whole time. I kind of feel like it set me up for life now, because I've got this new life ahead with my new hips, and I feel like I'm going to be able to live it the way I want to. I think my threshold for being happy is fairly low. As long as I'm not in pain, as long as I'm healthy, I can be happy. So I think that's why I kind of try and keep it in mind with everything. Whereas if I were to try and be the person I was before it affected me, I think I'd constantly be trying to reject it. Whereas I think if you just accept it, I think it'll lead to you living a happy life.
Present, and I love that you're never feeling sorry for yourself. You're just absolutely embracing the journey and just sharing the man it has made you become. There's none of this like, oh, why me? Why did this happen? It's just, this happened, and now I'm going to embrace it and turn it into as much of a positive spin as can be possible. And so I have to say, you're an amazing advocate for anyone else who is experiencing any form of chronic health issue, but especially for Perthes. I am so afraid to say it because I know I'm going to say it
No,
wrong.
yeah. I say Perthes. A lot of people say Perthes. I really, really appreciate that, man. And it's funny how what I felt was like a really unique story and a unique journey for me is so relevant to so many other people. Like the overlap is crazy. Even just the topic of, let's say, chronic pain. I couldn't believe when I started talking about that how many other people were suffering with very similar symptoms and very similar like mental knock-on effects, even if it was a completely different illness or injury. So there's such a wide umbrella there. It's been great that I've been able to come across so many people who are in the same position. Like the amount that we must have in common, even though we've had two completely different journeys, they're actually quite similar, I would say.
Completely. When you're dealing with chronic pain, it can be almost mind bending because you never get the chance to be yourself because you're always worried about the pain. As you said, sitting down, having a pain in your hip constantly, you're never present in the moment because you're present on the pain. You're trying to think while also trying to ignore the pain that you're going through. And I
Yeah.
love how you say that even the hangover, you're like, I'm getting up, I'm going to the gym because when you've experienced such chronic pain, you know the privilege it is to choose that pain. Now you choose to go to the gym with a hangover. That's pain in itself.
Yeah, exactly. And I chose to go out and drink now because I can go on a night out, I can go to a concert and stand without being in pain. Like I'm not here like, oh, I'm knackered today. I'm like, I'm so glad I got to do that. I'm actually, I'm glad I'm tired because this is the life I want to be living, you know? So I definitely, I don't think for whatever reason, and to be honest, I wouldn't blame anyone for I think feeling sorry for yourself, like that has a negative connotation. I think if you're to think, well, why is this happening to me? Being angry about that, being angry at the world, I don't blame anyone who feels that way. It's actually so valid. You know, why do I have this rare hip disease that none of my friends have, that no one else I know has? But thinking like that has never gotten me anywhere. I don't remember thinking like that. Maybe when I was very young, but that's just never been a thing for me. It's just never really served me well. I don't really see how that would help me get over it because I think if I thought like that, I don't think I'd have the same determination to keep fighting to go to the gym on the day where I'm in some serious pain. So I don't blame anyone who thinks like that, but for me personally, it hasn't really served me well, so I just don't.
Completely get it. And I think that you have to feel sorry for yourself at some stage because if you're not, then you're not really living the moment because your life is terrible. You're not seeing any way out. You deserve to feel sorry for yourself. But I
Yeah.
think when you wallow in that for a little bit, you allow yourself the time to pull yourself out of it. So I think, yeah, completely. If anyone is feeling sorry for themselves, you have to. It's a natural human reaction. There's a reason we feel sad. There's a reason we feel happy. There are times when we're going to have to feel sad to feel happy again. So no, it's beautiful advice for people. One thing that has kind of come up into my head is the effect that maybe it has had on your family and your girlfriend. Do you want to dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been with my girlfriend 8 years now. So since I'm 16, she's known who I was before this happened and after. So I think for her it's been really tricky because how do you respond and how do you support? You know, she's, I would say, the biggest reason why I've got through this because I've had that support and understanding and that kind of outlet. You know, I think if I wasn't able to talk about how much it was affecting me mentally this whole time, if I didn't have that opportunity and that understanding and support, I don't think I would have made it out as strong as I have now. I think anyone who is supporting someone who's suffering with illness or surgery, it's hard because what she always says is that she always used to say she wished she could feel my pain so she could understand it or take it so that I wouldn't have to. I think it's really hard for people who are trying their best to understand what someone's going through, but you only can up to a certain degree unless you're to go through it yourself. So it's been amazing having her by my side. And I think for my parents, I think it's been hard for them because I guess they probably thought that period as a child, that was it. So the fact that it came back, the fact that I always cracked a joke that like when I'd be sitting in orthopedics up in the Beacon Hospital, I'd be waiting for an appointment with my parents and we're looking around and everyone there is old enough to be a grandparent of mine. The people who are there for their hip replacement appointment are old enough to be my parents' parents. I think it's been quite upsetting for them. And I think I noticed, especially you can imagine like around the house and stuff for my girlfriend, for my really close mates, for my family. I noticed like I think seeing me in such a bad way was really hard for them. Especially in hospital. I got some good photos in hospital where like when I woke up from the surgery, like I'm green in the face. You know, I'm just, it's shocking. So I think it's been really hard for them to see. Like, it's hard for anyone to see someone you care about in such a bad way. And there's a kind of probably a sense of helplessness there because they can't really do much for me. What they did do is support me. You know, as I said, I had to be supervised to go for my walks in the park. When you're on two crutches and when you don't have a good leg, you can't bring your cereal in the morning. You can't grab a glass of water. So I was more or less cared for those first, I would say, 2 months heavily. And I'm so appreciative of that. And I try and say that to them as much as I can because they didn't ask for this. You're not thinking when you're in your mid to late 50s that your 23-year-old son is going to be getting a double hip replacement. And like that, when you meet someone, when you find a partner, when we were 16, I don't think my girlfriend thought that she was going to be caring for me either. So I'm so appreciative of that. I guess what I would say is that I've always tried my best to not let the pain get to me in general. And I've said that. I've tried to not let it impact who I am as a person. And I think I look back and I can say, thankfully, I don't think I've taken it out on the people close to me over the years. To be honest, I don't blame anyone who has either. Those moments where you're feeling so bad, how do you stay positive? How do you have a conversation with your mate or, you know, your family without being in bad form, you know? Like naturally, how can you be in good form? How can you be happy when you're in so much pain? But I think it kind of just goes back to how I never wanted to let it win. I think if I'd let that destroy relationships over the years, if I'd let that affect who I am as a person, I would have got to this point now where I'm finally in the clear. But I look back and I think, well, that did a lot of damage. So I'm actually really thankful because if I had to keep dealing with the pain, I don't think I could have kept that up. I don't think it would have been possible to not let it change who I am as a person. And for the people who I've got messages from people who've been waiting 15, 20 years for their hip replacement. I worry for them. Like I did my 5 years. That was like a 5 year sentence. Call it 10 years if you add childhood. But for the people who've had it this whole time, for the people who are messaging me saying I'm 45 and I've been waiting since I was 20 for a hip replacement, that's the side of things that maybe, you know, the human side. Is their consultant considering that? How much it's affecting their life? It's like a spider web. It affects so many things in your life. And I like that you brought that up because the relationships you have, it plays such a massive role because how can it not? When it affects how you are as a person, naturally it's going to have that knock-on effect.
Yeah, completely. I think when we're in the trenches, it kind of shows us who the people around us really are, you know. And I have to say, I have to commend your girlfriend. The fact that she would have the empathy or the want to even put herself in your shoes, knowing what you were going through from seeing the experience. Like, what a lady! What a lady!
Absolutely. I'm so lucky. And I think anyone who's really going through it, who's suffering with illness or injury or recovering from surgery, like I think you're never going to be close with someone unless if they're your boyfriend or girlfriend, you're going to be close with them than anyone else. So I'm so thankful she's watching this. Thank you so much.
What a queen!
Yeah. I'm so appreciative of it and I'm so happy that like we can live our life now with me being good. We were at a gig there on Monday in the Guinness Storehouse for Paddy's Day and I just kept saying the whole time like I look back years ago before the pain hit me, we used to love going to concerts. Just was one of those things that we did. Any festival, any concert, we'd go. I'd check my phone, it'd be 40,000 steps, not a bother. And then those couple of years where we still kept going, but I was maybe sitting instead of standing. Maybe I was sitting down in the accessible area. Um, I just kept saying, can you just imagine when we're back? And I promise, like, I'm going to get there. We'll be back someday enjoying a concert with me standing. I'm not going to have to sit down. I'm not going to be in pain. So to be at that point now is so enjoyable. It's great because it's like I feel like I made a lot of promises over the years because I felt the need to. I'd be saying that to her. I'd be saying to my mates, you know, can you imagine the amount of pints we'll be able to go for when I'm better? So it's just amazing to be living that life now.
Yeah, man, that's absolutely fantastic to hear because, and as you said, making the promises, that is an added pressure you put on yourself to get better. But, you know, pressure makes diamonds and you absolutely come from the depths of it to pull yourself back, man. So, no, it's absolutely fantastic. And I feel so privileged to hear this story and to hear how good and how beautiful the people around you are to have pulled you through it as well, because I know we do a lot of the work ourselves, but without the people we surround ourselves with, there's no coming back. And I know as a man, I know myself in my first ever surgery, I kind of told everyone around me to F off and I had a terrible time. Having the knowledge and having the the humbleness, I suppose, is the wrong word, but to accept the help. Because when you accept the help and you allow people to help you, you know that you'll get better quicker and you can repay them quicker. So I think
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing to, because I know as men we can be a bit pig-headed, trying not to take things out on people. But
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Something that I feel is really important that I try and talk about it. For example, me saying that my double hip replacement was really hard, that's not like a sign of weakness. I think you have to accept that what could I have done over the years to stop that pain? Nothing. So am I weak for saying that I really struggled? Definitely not. I actually think it takes strength to admit that, because I mean, I'm sure you're the same. For so long, I didn't want to. I'd say, I'm grand, I'm fine, I'm fine. Stop asking me, I'm fine, I told you I'm fine. But then it reaches a point where you're like, I'm not fine. And I think it was really difficult for me to admit that initially. But I'm at the point now where I try and share and tell people as often as I can, be open, share your story. I went to college, my hips kind of went bad again. The pain came back halfway into first year, and I didn't tell anyone. So when I was out of college for weeks on end, people would be saying, "Oh, this fella, like he's a lazy yoke, he doesn't like coming in." Whereas in reality, I'm actually in hospital getting injections in my hips, and no one knows because I never said it, because I didn't want anyone to think of me differently, and I didn't want to come across as weak. But as the surgery approached, I thought, I really have to be open about this. I'd actually be trying to tell people, "Oh yeah, I'm getting a double hip replacement. Like, how cool is that?" And now it's at the point where if I look on my phone, I'll probably see there's probably been millions of people who've seen me talking about how hard I found it. And sometimes I think about it and I go, just it's a bit mental, but there's no reason why I shouldn't be talking about it. So I definitely do think for men, I actually think in Ireland, there's a certain connotation associated with saying you're struggling. I wouldn't say shame is the right word, but I think there's this definite attitude of, I'm grand, I'm doing grand, I'm getting through it. Sure, not a bother, but that's not the truth. It's not possible. You can only do that for so long before, it'll just get the better of you, and you will start, as you said, like snapping and rejecting the help. But you gotta welcome the support. Can you imagine the amount of support I've had because I started talking about it? I like to say that while being honest, whether it be on social media or just with your friends and family, opening up about what you're struggling with, while it's hard initially, you're actually opening the doors to the support that you can get from people. I didn't really anticipate that happening, but even I could be having a bad day and I could wake up, see a message and see someone who's saying, "Thank you so much for sharing. I decided to tell my friends about what I'm going through and now they're supporting me." It's a real thing, and I think it's not something you realize until you do find the strength in yourself to open up and share what you're going through and be honest and say it was really hard and I'm really struggling and mentally it's really difficult. It's hard to do it, but how can people support you if you don't open up to them first?
completely, man. And I think the bravest and hardest thing as a man you can do is say, I'm not okay. Because it's so much easier, like, I'm grand, I'm strong, I'm whatever. To let
Yeah,
someone in and see what's actually going on in your mind and let what we perceive as weakness out is the only way you can become stronger again. Because if you keep internalizing all this pain, it's only going to come out and you're going to hurt the people around you.
yeah,
It develop into rage. Because I know myself, I definitely suffered with repressed anger for a long time, which would then manifest as, I'd act out or I'd get in fights and different things like that. But
yeah.
by being honest and open with people, you can take a weight off yourself. So I have to thank you so much for sharing that, man. What would you say to someone who's where you were a couple of years ago, who feels maybe trapped, their body's not functioning, they're maybe suffering a chronic illness, or they're stuck in a system where they're not getting the help they feel they need? What would you say to them?
It's a really good question, because you're basically asking what would I have told myself 5 years ago or 10 years ago even. And it's something I think about a lot. And I think it comes down to holding on to hope even when you've no reason to. I think one of the hardest parts about going through such a hard time is trying to keep that hope and trying to stay positive, even though you don't have any reason to. I think about when I was told I'd have to wait until my 40s for a hip replacement. And I think, was I a bit mad for thinking that I'd be able to get it? You nearly have to have that delusion almost. You have to hang on to that hope that things will get better, because if you hit a point where you don't think things will get better and you give up, you won't have it in you to fight. You're fighting and fighting even when you don't have a reason to, even when it feels like you'll never get there, but you will. And everyone is different. It might take someone 5 years, it might take someone 20 years. Holding on to that hope even when you're at your lowest moment, it's the thing that'll pull you out of it. And I think without having that hope that things will get better, that you'll see that light at the end of the tunnel, even when it feels like it's impossible, I think just having that in the back of your head mentally is really important, because it keeps you going. I'm not really sure how I got through the past couple of years. It's something I get asked a lot, and I look back and I think I don't know, because when things were that bad, on paper you shouldn't be okay, you shouldn't be getting through it. But I think it's just that fire that you have in you to keep fighting. I said already, like I saw it as a battle. I didn't want to let my disease get the better of me. So I fought, I held on to that hope. And I mean, look at where I am now. I got here even when 5 years ago it really did not seem possible. I held on to that hope, and it's something I've had to do since a young age. Even when it doesn't make sense, I've had people ask me why do you think things are going to get better? Like, why? Like, it doesn't make sense. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe it doesn't make sense, but you just have to.
Completely delusional self-belief is the only is it's a tool in the toolbox to get through everything, because we
Yeah.
can lose hope because you can see there's no brighter days. You're deep in the depths of this hole of despair. But I would always say that hope is that first step on the ladder to pull you back out of it, because it's very easy to lose hope and very easy to lose sight of everything we want to achieve when the present is such a tough time to be in. So it's a beautiful thing to share. Thank you so much. I have to say it's been my absolute privilege to hear your story today, and I can't wait to see what's going on in the future. So what's the next steps for you?
Thanks, man. I'm really glad that you had me on. I really appreciate it. It's been so great to chat and catch up. I think for the future, my next step is to keep rebuilding. I still have so far to go towards being maybe a normal guy with normal hips, although maybe I'll never be, but I can try my best. And I think the natural progression from here is running. Now, it's a controversial topic because a lot of people say you're not meant to run after getting hip replacement. And before I say anything else, I'll say that my surgeon gave me his blessing. He said, you should run. His attitude was, they're your hips now. You should do what you want with them and live your life the way you want to live it. And it's also helped by a lot of more modern recent studies and research that suggests that impact on replacement hips don't actually cause extra wear to the joint. So I suppose those two things have made me think, what if I can run? Because, I said earlier, I went down to the local park and I learned to walk again. And I think being able to run around that same park would be such a huge moment for me. I think I have to try. So I've just started a new series, I suppose you could call it, learning to run again after my double hip replacement. I say learning because it's something I'm going to have to learn, something that people take for granted. You see all of the influencers who run these days on Instagram, on social media, and it's got to the point where a 5K or even like a half marathon or a marathon, it's made look so easy because so many people are on that level. But for me, I'm going to have to take my first steps running like how I took my first steps on crutches. And it just feels like a huge moment for me because I never thought I'd run again. When I saw that initial consultant 5 years ago, he said, you need your hip replacement. And by the way, you will never run or play sports ever again because you can't right now because of the pain. And then when you get the hip replacement, you shouldn't. So kiss goodbye to running for the rest of your life. And that's one of those things I've really struggled with that across the past couple of years. If I'm being honest, it was one of the harder things. I've made it sound like I've managed to overcome all of these things, but it's something that I don't think I ever really overcame. So learning to run again now, just being able to run, feeling that power, feeling that progression is something I'm working towards. I've lost confidence in my body. I can't even trust my own legs. I can't run as we're chatting now. Like I tried, I'm up to about like 2 minutes, which is great, but it's like a really awkward looking like power walk kind of run. And I just want to do my best. I have that delusion maybe to think that I'll be able to run. Give it 6 months, give it a year, give it as long as it takes. I think I'll be able to run. And I just want to share that journey of doing something that I feel like so many people also can't do. I just think back to like if I'd seen someone when I was getting my operation, if I'd seen a guy my age, similar to myself, running after a double hip replacement, it would make me feel like everything's going to be okay. So that's a big part of it too. It's so much bigger than the running itself. It's more about everything that's behind it, like what it means. For me, it means rebuilding confidence in myself. It means overcoming those really difficult couple of years. I actually don't even really like running that much, to be honest. Like I used to hate doing running drills and training in my teenage years. Some people love it. I never particularly loved it, but that ability is massive for me. And not being able to these past couple of years, especially when everyone else around me, everyone in the gym can run, I might be stronger than most of them, but I can't run. So just learning to run again, and maybe in 3 months' time being able to do a kilometer, and then in 6 months' time, I'm not setting a goal. I don't want to be that person who says I'm going to run a marathon because that may be setting unrealistic expectations, but I want to learn how to do it. I want to show the journey, and I'm really excited to post videos about how awful that run looks because someone needs to do it, you know? So I'm really excited for that. I just want to keep rebuilding. I look back to how much I've achieved in the past year. If I've managed to go from not even being able to stand on my own two legs to being able to walk 5 kilometers, being able to go to concerts, sit for as long as I want without being in pain. If I can do all of that within a year, I just think, what can I do in the next year? So that's how I'm channeling my energy. I feel like that's the next natural step. And maybe when I finally can run, I might decide I don't need to. I'll give it up. Or maybe I'll mind my hips. But it just feels like there's one last hurdle to kind of get through and get over. So that's the plan for now.
And I cannot wait to see what happens because there's a saying where it says your mind is your prison or your power, and you have 100% made your mind your power from everything you've gone through. And it's unbelievable to see the journey you are putting yourself on to improve and get better. And also when you said, you're not going to make an outlandish statement like, oh, I'm going to go and do a marathon, because you're very much living reality. And, you want to put evidence in, you want to put the foundations in place first so you have evidence before you move to the next step. So it's fantastic advice for people, because I know we can get a bit giddy and we can make outlandish statements, but before we make these statements, we have to give ourselves evidence that we can achieve. So no, that's fantastic advice for people. And I cannot wait to see the running journey. I do love running myself. Never thought I would. Started with a couch to 5K and thought, why do people do this? It's horrible. But
I'm about to find it out myself. Fair play, man. And out of interest, like, have you found that it's helped you mentally? Like, because I, for whatever reason, I associate like a lot of physical ability with strength, because for so long I lost that. So for me, lifting heavy in the gym or even being able to run now, it ties in for me mentally and confidence and ability I feel in myself. So like, have you found it's helped?
I'd run every day if I wasn't afraid that I'd wreck my knees. I just find it a good outlet. Find you can, when sometimes your mind is a little bit clouded, I find going out for a run a really good one. I get a little bit more from that than I do from lifting weights in the gym. But both are so paramount to everything in my life. Physical activity gets endorphins going, gets everything going. Yeah, I have to say I do love it. And if you'd said to me 5 years ago, you'll be wanting to run a marathon, I'd say, okay, you've banged your head. There's something wrong with you. But yeah, no, I do find the running good, I have to say. But one question I'm gonna hit at you before we finish up, and I just love getting people's perspective on it.
Yeah.
What does happiness mean to you?
That's a great question. I could probably sit here all day and think about, exactly how to answer it. I think for me, I think happiness is being content with the life you have and looking forward to the life that you can build towards. That's just what I think for me. I think my kind of threshold for being happy is quite low. As long as I'm not in pain, as long as I'm healthy and the people around me are healthy and happy, as long as things are going okay, and as long as things can get better, then I think I'll be happy. I'm happy now, and as long as that it stays that way, I think I will continue to be.
That's absolutely beautiful. Stripping it back to the essentials and the everyday things. It's absolutely beautiful, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I've really enjoyed chatting. It's just mad, though. Obviously, you're the host, so you haven't spoken about your journey. Although I've seen you sharing it, so I know a bit about it. It's just mad because I feel like we can relate on so much, even though we haven't necessarily got into everything, which is nice. And it's kind of mad how this wouldn't have been possible if you never decided to start sharing your journey, if I never did. The power of social media, it's a bit mad.
Completely. And I know it's so easy bitch and moan about social media, but I think when you use it for good and you use it like to shine a light on things that people don't really see the light on, changes everything. And I know it's so hard to make the initial first steps, but for anyone who's listened to this, who's maybe afraid of sharing their journey, to me, there's no negative that comes from it. You find a community of people around you who will support you and you could reach out to and ask questions about. And I feel it's a privilege. It's a privilege for me to be here to speaking to you and just even all the conversations that come about. So man, I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. You're right. There's probably one negative, and that's the fear that's attached with it.
Yeah.
But what I told myself was, if I got a bloody double hip replacement, how can I be scared about posting a video? Like,
Yeah.
come on, like, cop on, So for anyone else who's going through it, that's a good way to think about it. If you're fighting so hard, think about how much you've gone through. You can post a video, you can deal. If your mates want to say anything about it, you can deal with it. Like, compared to what you're going through, it's nothing. So why would you let the fear of that stop you when you don't let the fear of anything else stop you?
And what other people think is none of your business either. Like, so, post the video.
Exactly. Yeah. Do it.
Jack, thank you so much for taking the time today, man.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed it. This is brilliant.
That was episode 20 of the Survival Project, and what a man. Grit, determination, like from dealing with chronic pain as a child to fighting for the surgery that changed his life. How he's learning to run again. Jack really is an unbelievable example of what it means to keep going, even when life keeps trying to stop you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please like, follow, share, subscribe. And if you haven't already, maybe give us a rating, 5 stars. It all helps the podcast grow and it helps us reach more ears. I'll be back again next week with Oliver, a Danish IBD sufferer whose health issues sparked the idea for an app, which is making waves worldwide. I'll see you next week.